Welcome back, everyone, to the Afrophile Pod. Today's guest is a tech visionary, a startup builder, and an all-round disruptor of African innovation. Bernard is the brains behind Onesha, a platform connecting Africans' top creative talent to the world, and Patika, which is a very powerful startup that is powering Sanifu, an AI tool that is automating manufacturing across the continent. I've seen it happening in the field, so I know this is some real stuff. The last time I was in Nairobi, I got a demonstration and I almost emptied my wallet to invest in this startup. From pitching to KCB's Lion's Den to joining Y Combinator, Bernard's journey spans Nairobi's hustle, Silicon Valley's grind, and everything in between. He's a founder, angel investor, and a mentor who is building, scaling, and giving back all at once in Nairobi and across the continent, as you realize. So, whether you're into startups, tech for good, or just love a good old story, this one could be for you. Welcome to the pod, Bernard. How are you doing?
Thank you, Tara, man. I appreciate it for the nice introduction. Only that I thought today we are doing an Afropod. We should be on our African attire, man. So I had to pull that in into the podcast. Anyway, thank you so much for the introduction, brother. I know it's been an amazing journey in terms of in terms of you trying to understand the current business landscape in African market, connecting with amazing entrepreneurs to also get a feel of how the Africa landscape generally is growing across various sectors, be it technology, infrastructure, development, policy, which I think we'll also talk a bit about policy in terms of how that affects business in Africa. I'm pretty impressed with your vision of trying to also bring this out to the world so that people are able to understand what's happening in the African continent. So it's going to be pretty amazing for me to talk about what I'm currently experiencing, especially in the tech space and places where our businesses interact with, especially like other sectors that are on the periphery of tech. That's been pretty amazing in terms of looking at, because in the past, like most of these places, like technology was not having a lot of interactions with other industries. So it's going to be amazing to also get your perspective on in terms of how technology should interact with other sectors, given that you've been in other amazing markets or markets that have been much developed. So thank you for the welcome, and I look forward to a good discussion, brother.
Of course, of course. I mean, I understand, we're recording this on Sunday, June 8th. People always ask me, when was this recorded? Because I actually have significant lags between recording and uploading this. Sometimes I upload immediately, sometimes I keep it in the wraps and then upload it later. But this is 16:32 in Nairobi, I assume. It's 9:32 in the secret location where I film from. And people can always try and triangulate where that could be if it's 16:32 in Nairobi and it's 9:32 where I am. But how's Nairobi? Let's start with that. How's it this morning? What's happening in the city, and what's been the past week and month like?
Oh, I mean, Nairobi is amazing. I think it's one of the most amazing cities to be in Africa, especially during the summer. Those people who have summer in their places, I think Nairobi is the place to be. There's amazing nightlife, amazing tech scene, amazing events. Like right now, there's so many events to do in Nairobi that like right now, literally, like in my estate, there's no one around. People are outside attending various places. So I need to send you an invoice, man. You've kept me here. You're going to keep me here. I should have gone out, man. So
I I I I thought you were supposed to be hungered down running your businesses anyway. But yeah, sure. Please do send the invoices and let's get into the tech spirit part. But I mean, I look at this, your story. You started being an entrepreneur when back then when you were in uni or even before that. And one of the big things you started was the campus bees that you ran on campus. But what first sparked your entrepreneurial spirit? What is it that got to you that said, let me try and solve problems for people here and see whether we can make money while doing it at the same time.
yeah, I mean, it's actually pretty amazing. Just like an entrepreneur, like most of us who get into business, the first thing that comes into your mind is not always about money, especially when you're getting into it very early. Um, especially for me, the inspiration was my dad.
Mhm.
Back in 2002, from 2002 to 2007, thereabout, my dad ran one of the biggest distribution businesses in the western part of Kenya. So you basically get FMCG products from like a group of Indians who were distributing these products across the country because they were the ones who that time could actually afford to buy these things in bulk from Nairobi and distribute them across the country. And my dad got to be one of the very first guys who got an exclusive to get these products from where they were arriving in Kisita in western part of Kenya and then distributing to the smaller towns. So he did that for around 4 or 5 years thereabout, and I saw him building that business from scratch to doing some pretty good turnover. Even if that time I couldn't understand like revenues because I was like pretty young, I could actually see the numbers were pretty pretty impressive. So like all my life I was always like I need to also get into business because when you like I remember literally my dad, one of the key things he used to do when I was running that business was people at that time couldn't afford to buy some of these things in bulk. This was like 2002, 2001, right? And someone wants to buy a TV, someone wants to buy a solar lamp, someone wants to buy, cooking oil or whatever, but they can't afford it. So what my dad would actually do, he was telling me this the other day when we were just catching up, he was telling me like he literally used to lend people these items. So my dad literally started buy now, pay later way back. So people will come to the shop, they will like, I only have like 100 shillings, which is like just $1, and I want this item, but I'm not able to pay these things right now. Can I pay you once I get my paycheck in 2 or 3 weeks? Especially guys who are living on paycheck, government employees, civil servants essentially. So he used to lend them out. He used to actually give out these products to these people. And actually, you could actually see the impact that small act was actually having. And looking back, when he was telling me that story, I went to see him a couple of weeks ago. He could actually tell you like people literally used to keep keep kids in school because of that small lending he was doing, right? People would come to the shop and say, give me a textbook, give me an exercise book. I'm not able to afford it, but he would give it out, right? So you could actually see the impact that business was having in the community. And I was like, I think this is something I also want to get into because you can actually see the change that you're having in people's lives. So all through my primary school, my secondary school, I was always trying to crack my mind around what type of business I should get into that has like a large impact in people's lives. So when I got into campus, I was basically playing around with a couple of ideas. I'm one of those guys who likes bragging that we went to the Alliance. Yeah, I mean, it's one of the best schools in the country. Actually, in East Africa, it's one of the best schools in East Africa that takes the brightest students from across the country, and you all put there. But when you get there, you are like, you start from the bottom because everyone there is like the best, right? So
Yeah.
when you're in that environment, your mind is sort of tuned to be extremely competitive, and you're basically like sort of trying to think from first principles and to also think from like problem solving perspective on any situation, right? So that type of mindset sort of got intertwined into my journey as a young guy and getting into campus. That kicked it right in. Like in the first year, I was able to spot the first business I should do, which was campus based. Um, you mentioned about it, and it's just brought in some very good memories. So when I got into campus, I remember just walking around campus, and I could actually see all these notice boards of people putting up things they're selling in campus. So someone was putting up, I'm selling a laptop, I'm selling my home system, I'm renting out a room. And I was like like the person who is selling that laptop is like probably getting an extremely limited reach because it's just a printer. Now, why not put this online for all campus students to see? So that's actually how the campus biz platform came about. This was like in 2014 thereabout, and platforms like Jumia hadn't picked up. Platforms like Gigi, which is like an exchange a classified site. The tech was very early, so I remember trying to, find out who else is building an e-commerce website, and all these platforms were just getting started in Kenya. So I hacked the platform together, put it up, and I think that time I was averaging an average of like 100 sign-ups a day, and it picked up quite well, and I ended up just selling it for a very small amount of money to a local retailer who was also into laptops. So it was pretty interesting.
Interesting. You're being modest, I assume, when you say for a very modest amount of money. But
Yeah, yeah.
let's talk about before you sold it, though. I mean, there's obviously the transition of you admiring your dad, thinking business would be great. But I assume you faced quite a few challenges when you were starting your own first business as well. What were some of those challenges you faced that you would say, look back, you would tell the younger self, maybe you try to avoid this, or you try to to sleep less, or work more, which is which?
I mean, the challenges. Actually, the pretty interesting thing about starting business early, you don't see some of these things as challenges because you are enjoying the process. Like you're trying to
Right,
you're
right.
trying to solve a problem. You're enjoying the process. Money is not even in your head, and you're selling these things to your friends. Like you go. Like I remember going into like rooms, like where students literally stay and telling them, I have this website. If you want to sell something, just post it here and the posting is free. I'm not charging you anything. I remember I was paying for the expenses for that business from my government loan, right? So I used to pay hosting fees and all these things, paying a developer because at some point I got tired of coding and programming, so I had to pay a developer to build the site. Um, and that time, even the lack of funds to actually pay someone, to me, it wasn't like I didn't view it like as a challenge. I viewed it as part of the process or part of building the business. But looking back, actually, looking at those things on a micro scale, like lack of funds, lack of access to distribution, because like literally, I remember like by distribution I mean like getting guys to sign up with the platform. Um, I
Yep.
literally had to like go from, because remember how campuses are structured. Like you have School of Economics, School of Arts, School of Medicine. So you have to like walk from the School of Medicine to all the way School of Education, all the way School of Arts and Sciences. And I couldn't figure out like how to get the message out quite fast, because you have to go there and literally pitch to a class of students just before the lecturer comes in. So you're like, guys, I have this thing I'm running, and then the lecturer just comes in and, young man, go and take a seat, right? So actually, like distribution, like looking back, it sort of hit my head, like I was trying to also solve a problem, the challenge of getting the product out to users. Like, how can I get this product to as many people as possible? So looking back, those two main things still challenges even for my current business. Like, how do you crack distribution, and how do you crack out inbound sales? How do you maintain that continuous user signups every day? Like I remember, I wish I had those 100 signups every day for my current business. I was like, man, I was doing well that time. Um, so these things, I look them back and I'm like, those were challenges that time, but that time I viewed them as part of the process. But right now, like trying to build a solid business with revenue, with a team, you have to sort of solve these problems in layers. That time I was just doing them randomly, right? Because I didn't do that as
Right,
a
right,
business. I was
right.
like, I think this needs to be done, and it needs to exist in campus. So it was pretty interesting. So those challenges, I think anyone who is getting into business, be it early, you'll come across them, but you may not be conscious about them really until you come back and reflect. By then, I was actually trying to solve a sales problem, a distribution problem, a marketing problem. But that time, really, I wasn't very much aware of them.
Fascinating. And I'm assuming it is because of Campus Biz that you finally ended up in the Lion's Den, and finding yourself competing with others and pitching. Can you tell us about that experience, and how that has sort of helped you in your entrepreneur journey?
Yeah, interesting question. So campus base wasn't the one that I did in Lions Den. It was actually the business that was it was sort of was because it was inspired by that business. Because remember, I had sold that business for a very small amount of money, and next I was
Yep.
looking for now something big to do, because I was like, actually, someone can make money out of these things, like this whole thing that I'm enjoying to do, someone can actually make money out of it. So I remember trying to think about like, now I need to solve a bigger problem. I need to solve a bigger problem so that I have, in case I'm going to sell it, I make a good upside from it.
Mhm.
But that time, even like selling it wasn't like the motivation. I was like, I could actually see a bunch of students using that site to sell very interesting things. I remember there was one student who came to I think it was my room then. He was like, oh, by the way, I've been trying to look for the person who owns the site. I was trying to raise school fees for my end of year semester, and I was able to sell my laptop through my two laptops through your site, and I thought I should give you this $10. I was like, oh, interesting. Because at that time, remember, I wasn't charging anything. I didn't know how to pay. I didn't know how to integrate payments into the site. I didn't know how to run ads on the site. It was just something that was running, right? So that time,
Yeah.
I remember opening my email and checking like daily emails on new user signups and whatever. And then I opened and I came across this email from Safaricom. Safaricom, the owners of M-Pesa. I think most of the listeners here know M-Pesa. It's one of the largest mobile money transfer services in the world. And they were running this program where they were choosing students who are building amazing things in campus. Like they were like, oh, if you're building an amazing thing in campus, would love to come to your campus. You come and pitch, and we select the top three, and we give you guys some money. So I remember I was like, I need to apply for this, right? Because it seemed like very, very interesting. I was in second year then. I was in second year going to third year, I think. And I was like, okay, so but now they wanted you to apply with a project, right? Like you need to apply with a project that has users and you're at the stage of trying to validate the problem. And I was like, so there I remember they had like I think four days to deadline. And I remember like looking at a list of problems like, okay, what project do I need to apply with? Um, remember I was like, I need to solve a bigger problem. So in my head, I was like, let me look at unemployment. Unemployment is a big problem in the African market. Lots of people are currently trying to solve it. There were a bunch of classified sites that time that were actually trying to solve the problem. And they were solving it like using normal resumes, normal whatever. I was like, there must be an interesting way in terms of how this problem can be solved. What if you enable, so I was in my head, like, what if you enable a student start doing side jobs when they're in campus, or that by the time you're graduating, you have a bit of experience. So what solution can sort of bring that into perspective? So I was like, what if you enable students get like gigs in campus using their portfolio? I was like, that would be pretty interesting. So portfolios, remember, these are like if you've done architecture or computer science or interior design, there's what they call portfolios in campus. So this is wherever, like, if you're doing architecture or interior design or computer science, every lecture basically has a project you have to do. So if it's architecture, I remember they were telling me the lecturer will tell you, redo the design of this building using your own imagination, even if you're in second or third year. So that will form part of your portfolio when you're in campus. So I was like, why not enable these students just upload their portfolios to some site, and then whoever wants to hire them for a gig, they'll just go there, look at their profile, look at their portfolio, and then hire them, right? So I remember I called my friend who was a programmer. We had something together, and then we went to the School of Architecture in Nairobi University, actually one of the best in the world. And I remember going to the second year class and asking the guys, do you guys have any portfolios, or any of you want to get like side gigs? But these side gigs will require someone to see your portfolio. So guys were like, of course, let's sign up. So the interesting thing was like, oh, guys tried to upload their portfolio the first time. It was so hard, because remember, these are like files. Architectural, like files from architecture are heavy, man. Like they're like 2-3 GB thereabout, because they're doing these things on ArchiCAD. They're doing on this architectural software. So we hadn't built a platform to handle that those level of files. So on upon pitching, and we got like a bunch of calls from students. Oh, like the files are not uploading. We are trying to upload this thing to your site, but it's getting a bunch of errors. I remember, like, it was almost 11 midnight thereabout. So I called my friend. I'm like, dude, like, what did you build? Like, this thing is not working. A bunch of guys are trying to upload the portfolios. I remember I got into the phone, and he was able to basically hack something together. That was like 2 days after the deadline for Safaricom, the Safaricom M-Pesa thing, because we had to get users to use the platform before we sign up. So long story short, we put something together. We applied for the Safaricom program. We got accepted into the program, and at the end of the program, we were one of the guys who were selected as the top 5 to receive funding from Safaricom. And then they're the ones now who enabled us to get into Lion's Den, because now they were like, you guys now need to make this bigger so that it doesn't just focus on students. Now focus on freelancers who have portfolios. You can have freelancers who are doing other projects in computer science, in design, in basically literally anything. And I remember one of the guys who was from Safaricom side was like, you need to make this like to be the Upwork for the African market. Like Upwork is huge in globally, and or Fiverr, right?
Yeah.
So you need to make this to be, because of Upwork, you go there, view someone's portfolio, and hire them. So yeah, we actually crafted it to look like Upwork, and that is what got us into Lion's Den by KCB Bank. Obviously, KCB, that experience was also pretty interesting because they're one of the largest banks in the region. They were actually pretty much looking for businesses and guys to invest in. So through that Safaricom program, we now transitioned into Lion's Den, which is a local adaptation of Shark Tank. So that was pretty interesting. We got in there. We got 2 million from one of the lions, and it was pretty interesting to work with that lion, and that now brought me right into the venture capital and actual startups world. Pretty interesting, Yeah.
Which I guess you are now also participating in on the other end, since you're an angel investor in something, and we'll come back to
Yeah.
that. But I'm guessing from what you're saying here, I mean, the business that got you into Lion's Den and connecting with freelancers and actually expanding it comes across as being very similar to one of the businesses that you then started, Onesha. You want to talk about that and how that transition, is that how you then founded Onesha, or those are still two interlinked businesses?
Actually, that is the business now that now transitioned into Onesha. If you look
Okay.
at our Lions Den video, we had three guys. That was myself, my tech guy, and my other sales guy. So that is the business now that obviously now eventually became Onesha, the platform. And the reason why we now sort of unbranded it, not to be focused on students, it was like we now need to make this a global platform. We need to make it, because we wanted to get projects from overseas, so that we give these projects to local freelancers. Even local businesses were actually using our platform to basically get gigs done, because it was pretty cheap. Once we got, so before Lions Den, we did a bit of rebranding. That's when we actually came up with the name Onesha. Onesha is a Kiswahili name that means to show, and it was basically anchored on the fact that we want to enable African freelancers to show what they're capable to the world. And we wanted now, upon of course showcasing anyone, basically, be it someone in San Francisco wants to have design done, be it someone in New York wants to wear a local designer. Because remember, there were some brands that wanted to launch in Africa locally, but they couldn't find good talent. So we were like, we want to be the platform where basically anyone who wants to hire African talent, you can just come and find all this talent there. So we branded the whole business into Onesha. We did a very interesting projects. We worked with them very interesting brands from the US, slightly medium businesses who are spending pretty good amount of money. And that is also the same business which we also raised. After Lion's Den, we also raised another round from European investors for Onesha. They're actually European investors who wanted to do impact investments into African startups. And we fit that profile because we were creating employment, we were getting guys and a living and things like that. So I think Onesha was one of the most impactful businesses I actually ever did, because you are literally, I remember guys sending me inbox which actually have like, man, like without you I couldn't have paid school fees, because like literally you're paying someone for a gig, like exposing their work to the world, and you're paying these guys, right? So that actually sort of tied to the first thing I said earlier of like, I've always wanted to do businesses that are very impact focused. Like you're creating employment, you're helping people earn money, you're helping businesses bring in efficiency, because you can actually see the joy in someone's eye when they're telling you the impact their product has had in their business or in their personal life. So it's pretty interesting. So the business got into Lion's Den, and that is the same business that we raised capital from some European angel fund.
Interesting. And you talked about the team that you had when you're pitching, the sales guy who you had and the tech guy who you had. how did you go about sort of like bringing up the initial Onesha team, and in subsequent businesses as your strategy changed of how you look for your teams and co-founders and initial employees and stuff?
Yeah, so the my initial co-founder actually, this is someone that I knew from my days in high school. We went to high school together. We did a lot of things together in high school, and I remember trying to find my technical co-founder for that business, and I remember going to LinkedIn and trying to check like in my network who is a technical person. This was like an age where even building a website was really hard. Like not nowadays you can build a website with just a simple prompt. That time it's like, man, like you had to get someone to build the website, do integrations for you. It was just hard. Just looking back, it was like that single skill has been sort of been eliminated by a prompt. Pretty interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
it is
it is
amazing.
amazing,
It's
right?
amazing.
So so in my network, I found out I came across my friend now who I came from high school. I was like, oh, I can actually see you are currently studying computer science in campus. I'm working on this amazing thing. Why not just come on board? We work together on it. And coincidentally, he was working also on a platform to enable students to get internship that time. He called it Internity. It was a pretty interesting name, like internship, Internity. I'm like, oh wow. And you were like, why not match the two businesses? Because you are trying to help students get internships. I am trying to help these guys get gigs. For them, I was like, I'm not going to help people get internships because they're not paid internships. I want to get them paid work, right? So I
Right.
remember I met with him for coffee. We had a chat, and they were like, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's match our two businesses." And that's what actually came to be known as Onesha. Because my other business was called a different name. For him, he had a different name. We're like, let's just choose one common name that both of us can agree on. And I think that relationship worked because this is someone I knew from campus, so you always have this feeling of not letting your body down, like someone you've known for a very long time. Um, and um,
Hmm.
and also, I remember the next person we brought into the team was someone who was heavily invested in helping creatives find paid work. I found this guy in an event that one of our freelancers had done for a client, and I think he just started talking to me, and I was like, you seem to be very invested in this subject of helping freelancers in Africa get paid work. Why not? Why let's link up sometime and see what you can do together at Onesha. So I remember I met him after that, and we had a long discussion. It was like, I'm willing to come on board as a team member. I don't need you guys to pay me anything. I'm willing to put in my investment, my effort, and everything, and I want to be a team member. That is the same guy. If you look at Lansdowne is a guy who's in specs. And that's the same guy, like
Hmm.
I pretty much work with him up to date on some things. And for me, one thing that taught me about finding a co-founder and a team is number one, you want to work. I actually want to work with people that I love working with. And this is actually pretty much also well known even in the guys in the VC space. And um, Jeff Bezos actually sort of advocates this a lot. Like just work with people who you just enjoy working with, right? Even if
Hmm.
there was no monetary value, would you still enjoy working with these people, right? Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
to me it was a hell yes, right? Um, so we really, because I remember we did a lot of work. There were days where there was no revenue, there were no customers, and we still had to push together and make the business work. Um, so that taught me actually even today in terms of how I hire people or talent. I like like, can I enjoy working with this person, right? So oftentimes I prefer to have like just like informal chats over coffee, especially if it's someone that we
Hmm.
want to work with in the long term. Like the reason I prefer coffee meetings is like it's very hard for someone to fake those meetings. Like you're pretty much able to build something, right?
Right. Right.
Like this guy, I met him in an event, the guy that I'm telling you about. And that event was pretty informal. He was like himself, it was like everything. Like he was telling me his raw truth, right? So that has always been
Hmm.
my principle. Like, first of all, will I enjoy working with this person for the long term? I want to have an informal chat with this person for me to see if there's anything they're hiding. If they appear to be fidgety or trying to engineer the conversation, you're like, this person is not a good fit. And also, like, you also want to gauge like the long-term thinking of someone. Like, these are guys who wanted to do this thing for the long term. Like, these are guys who wanted to solve a problem that you cannot just solve within. Unemployment is really hard to solve in Africa. Um,
Right.
so you can't just wake up and say, next year we'll make a lot of money from solving unemployment. So we have to think in terms of like 3, 5, 10 years limit. So all these guys were long-term thinkers, and I was like, these are guys I would actually enjoy working with in the long term. Even if we have disagreements, at least we aligned on the mission, right? So it was like we have to be aligned on a macro level. So like on the micro details, you can disagree here and there, but on the macro picture, you have to be like super aligned in terms of where this business is going. So even right now, when we're hiring for people, you have to look at, is this person able to form a mindset, or are they in the thinking framework that is like 3, 5 year horizon maximum? Because of course you cannot tie down an employee to a 10-year plan, but are they able to tell you what your business could be in 3 years? Because if they give you that, then they can problem solve using long-term thinking, right? They won't be looking for short-term
Yeah.
fixes. So that's actually how I look at like how to get teams to work with, how to get even my current co-founders for Sanifu and Patika, they're guys like I knew in campus, right? And we actually did a lot of work with them in Onesha because we used to actually outsource work to them. They were like one of the freelancers on our platform. So all my business I've always like try to at least work with people that I know and people who are very long-term thinkers.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And you brought in Patika and Sanifu there just as I was about to start on that. But tell us about that business. That seems to be the one that keeps you awake these days, and that's making you leave the city and travel the world and try to grow it. What's happening there? Tell us a little bit.
Yeah, I mean that was pretty interesting. So I did Onesha for 7 years. I did this from 20 when was this from 2020 for 2016 27, actually the full time from 2016 to 2020 COVID. Those were like 7 years, around 7 years thereabout, of running Onesha full time. We made good revenue, we raised money, we did all these kinds of things. But I felt obviously that business was turning slowly to be an agency because of the amount, because we were dealing with you were dealing with people, right? Like I remember one time we had like
Mhm.
almost 50 projects running at the same time, like in a daily basis. You have a project coming in from the US, from the UK, from South Africa, from Uganda, from Tanzania. All these people want to hire someone from your platform, right? And you had to you had to manage like dispute resolution was one of the biggest things like we were struggling with at that time, because if a freelancer doesn't deliver a project and the client has paid a deposit, and we actually used to hold that money in an escrow account, right? So we have to decide, do we refund the money, do we pay partially to the client? So we got so much into people management that we forgot to scale the platform. And one of the biggest challenges that also came out of it was like there was a lot of intermediation where people go outside the platform, because if if you're in a Zoom meeting with a client and you have a freelancer here, they'll figure out how to connect with each other and then they leave you out of the platform. So that is what they call intermediation, and that obviously means it's revenue happening outside the platform. So we have to turn the business to be sort of an agency in a way, so that we keep quality control internally. We keep basically everything internally without having at any point the client communicating to the creative. So we are able to quality control work that way. So scaling that business became, of course, a challenge, and I opted to exit the business. And the business is still there and it's still making some good revenue. I'm still part of the board for that business. And I remember trying to actually sort of find the next thing that I want to do. And I remember having coffee with my current co-founders, where we
Mhm.
met. They were already working on something actually. So my two co-founders, that is Felix and Sydney, they were also running a software consulting firm actually that time. They were doing software consulting for the government. They had a government project they were doing that time. And I remember them telling me it was almost coming to an end, and They wanted to do something that has recurring revenue and that is solving an actual problem. If you're running a software consultancy firm, you're always looking for projects to do, right? There's no recurring revenue
Yes.
coming in every month. You're always like looking for the next project, either government project or private project, all these things. And I remember them, they wanted to now have a product. And I remember they pitched me this product that they were building for small businesses, and they were trying to get trying to get it in front of users, right? And obviously one of the ways we aligned was like, Bernard, with your marketing background, sales background, I think you'll be amazing to come in on board as one of the co-founders and CMO. Actually, that time it was just sales. I was like, I just want to work with you guys to help you guys sales. I wasn't so keen that time to become a co-founder per se. I just wanted to see where this goes, right? I was like, I can help you guys with marketing, with distribution, because I remember I had done like a business that ran like an agency, so we had actually figured out how to get products out, right? And we had already worked with Sydney and Felix, my co-founders, in their previous. So the software consultancy business, we used to work together between Onesha. So whenever we get software projects from clients on the platform, we'll push it to them. And whenever they get clients who require freelancers, they'll come to us. So we had done that back and forth for like 4 or 5 years, right? So it was a pretty natural conversation. So I came on board, put a marketing plan together, a sales plan together, and within probably 2 weeks, that product was actually getting like 500, 600 users a week. And in Kenya, that's a lot of signups on a weekly basis. This was a product designed to help small businesses collect credit. And the reason why I resonated with that problem was, I remember the business I told you about, my dad, or him doing distribution. I remember him struggling to collect like debt or credit from some of his customers, right? You have to call someone, they're not available, whatever. So this application that they had built, it was basically a reminder-based app where you enter the name of the customer or distributor or wholesaler or whatever, and it will send a reminder to the person who owes you credit. So I came on board, sent a plan, and on a weekly basis, we were signing up around 500 businesses who wanted to use who wanted to use the app. And at some point, we were like, guys, let's do this full time. It seems like it's picking up pace, and I'm also looking to transition from Onesha. They're also looking to transition from their software consulting job. We're like, let's do this full time, right? And I remember, obviously, they had invested in the product initially. They had put in some money into the product from their software consulting business. They actually took some funds and invested into the product. So initially, access to like funding wasn't a problem that time because we were pretty much able to sustain the operations. And we were growing so fast that time because we wanted to like getting a bunch of users on a weekly basis. You have to support them. You have to, if issues are coming up, you have to support them and go visit them and all those things. We were like, guys, we need funding, guys. We need to get in funding. We can't keep burning. We can't keep burning like, I don't know, $1,000 a month, on this business. If we continue this, we'll be bankrupt. Because at some point, like, we are putting in our own money into the business, right? Like, we are funding client meetings, we are funding all these things, and we're almost running out of runway. So we started looking at investors to talk to, and that's when we came across Y Combinator. I'd actually known about Y Combinator for a very long time. And I told my co-founders, let's apply for this program. So we applied for the first time, we got rejected. The second time, I think we got an interview. The third time, we got accepted into the program. And from there, the main reason we got into YC was like the growth was pretty impressive. And these are guys who invest in business that grow like wildfire. Like, you have to be growing like out of this world for them to consider you investable. So that is basically how sort of I transitioned into now the current business that I'm doing, which is now the YC funded one.
And this business, I mean, just in bare basic terms, as I understand it, you are seeking to help automate some of the manual processes that are involved within the value chain. I think when I was in Nairobi and you took me to one of the sites where you were essentially having this these people who are distributors or wholesalers, but they have a lot of invoicing that happens every now and then, and they're distributing to various shops across just in the greater Nairobi area. But then because this process is so manual and you need to actually know the inventory in real time, by the time the receipts come back and you try to manually put them in the night, it delays the business. So if you can have a way to automate that, that becomes easy. Is that a good summary of what you're looking at?
Yeah, that's sort of the summary of the business. So remember we had started with, we are going to enable businesses automate the process of debt collection from your customers.
Right.
And we had one of the customers that time who was using that app to collect credit. And I remember they calling us like, guys, we are using your debt collection solution, but we want some other processes automated for us, right? And we were like, do we want to go into our other areas that are not core to us? And we did a lot of assessment. I remember trying to like as a startup, you want to maintain focus. Like you don't want to do a lot of things. You want to solve one problem, one customer, one market for a specific time. So remember we were solving the debt collection problem. You were like, we need to automate how guys collect credit in the African market. Think of it like, well, it's like,
yeah,
you are a typical family or you're a typical small business. In Nairobi, you have your own distribution business somewhere where you are distributing bread, and you don't have cash to pay your manufacturer. So you go there and take goods on credit for you to pay like after 14 days.
yeah.
So remember, if you're a manufacturer, you have to call. If you have 20 guys who are taking things on credit, you have to employ a team that has to be calling these guys. Man, your 14 days is up. You need to pay. So that is the problem we're trying to automate. So we were like, let's do the most basic way to solve that problem is to automate with reminders, right? And to enable this small business to pay in small amounts. So you don't have to wait for the 14 days. Just enable the small business to pay in small amounts. So that by the time the 14 days is here, he has basically a small balance left. And obviously that is what actually impressed the YC team, because it's a huge problem in the African market, be it whether in Lagos or in Nairobi or Johannesburg or Durban or whatever. Any small business that is getting goods from somewhere, they're getting them on credit, and there's someone somewhere who needs to collect it, right? And you have to employ people to do that whole process. So we did that, and we at the peak of that business, we had like 50,000 businesses using it on a daily basis. I remember at some point we had like almost 100 million shillings worth of debt recorded into the app, not collections, just the recordings. That means like that's the amount of money that needs to be collected from businesses. And so I got this call from one of our clients. We're like, guys, you guys have automated this for us. Our accounts payable, our accounts receivable team are loving the product, but we are having this other problem where we are trying to automate sales order processing, where we need to automate how we process orders from our customers. We need to automate part of invoices, invoice collection as well. We have an ERP, but it's not working as it should. Are you guys able to just come by and see what's up if you're able to solve this? So I remember we did a lot of assessment on that use case, and also, I mean, the call also came in at a good time because we were in the middle of a pivot. We wanted to pivot from serving small businesses to serving enterprise because of profitability and runway. So you were like, let's just go down there and explore this problem further. So we went to the plant where I took you. That is the customer who called us. So we went to the plant. We met with the team. So remember how far we drove. So we drove all the way from Nairobi down to Thika, and we went to this plant. They showed us their process, like how an order comes in from the customer, how it gets processed, how it gets to because when you get an order, remember you are processing chicken, it has to get to the processing facility, right? So there are a lot of inefficiencies there. Like even if there's like a 5 minutes delay in that process, you might not deliver an order. Remember, this is a process whereby you're delivering an order worth $100,000 to a customer, right? This is like a bulk purchase. And they have given you a schedule in terms of when you should deliver that product. Typically, this actually how supermarkets operate. Hypermarkets all over the world, that's how they operate. Be it Tesco, be it Walmart, be it Woolworths, whichever. If you're a supplier, they give you a delivery schedule. If by
Yeah.
7 a.m. your truck is not outside, it will be they basically return the truck because you're going to inconvenience their receiving team, right? Because
Yes.
remember they have to
Yeah.
open at 8, and you don't want customers seeing trucks delivering chicken at 8. So you have to deliver between 5 a.m. in the morning and they're seeing 6 a.m., right? That means every moment of processing that PO, you don't want to waste any time, right? So any inefficiency in that process has to be eliminated entirely, or you have to extremely reduce it to almost insignificant time. So they told us like we have this place where we are stuck, whereby you have a supermarket sends us an order, it comes to email, someone has to go and read the email, download the PDF, and then start reading the items, and then start entering the items, and then there's an error there, and then they go correcting the error. They'll basically waste a lot of time in that whole process. They were like, are we able to automate this process? These are guys who are receiving 1,000, 2,000 POs per day. These are POs, not consumer orders. These are like orders from other businesses.
All
They
right.
serve the entire country,
Yeah.
right? Probably they are now, I think, hitting $200 million in annual turnover. So you need to be as efficient as possible. So I mean, you saw the whole operation yourself there. So we came in, we were like, okay, typically, a customer tells you their problems. They don't think about the solution. They tell you, these are the problems I
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
Can
Yeah.
you find a solution, right? Because we had actually solved their credit collection problem pretty well, like it was pretty neat. And it was very simple. It has been simplified. So we went to I remember we had an investor meeting. So we had this meeting with YC partners, and so we have three investors in our business. We have Y Combinator, we have Asymmetry Ventures, and we have Good Water Capital, and we also have a bunch of other angel investors. We were like, guys, we come across this customer, they need this done, and obviously this is a sector we have always wanted to get into because it's a large enterprise client, and we're currently in the process of pivoting the customer to serve enterprise from our current product. I mean, the good thing with these investors is like they just tell you like what is your gut feeling as a founder? Do you feel this is a market you need to get into? And what is the market telling you? Is this a problem that you feel you need to solve? Because we as investors don't have the answers. You're the one on ground. You need to make this decision yourself. And if you feel this is the right decision you need to make, just go ahead and make it, right? And that's actually that's one of the reasons why I love American money. American money is very flexible, man. Like you can literally just change what you're doing overnight, and no one is really asking you that much. Small diversion, like if you look at American money, European money, African money, they behave very differently. American money is very.
What's the most rigid? African money or is it
Oh
European money?
man,
Which is more rigid?
honestly, like I'm almost putting European money and African money almost on the same level. But I remember I've raised money from European investors and they're a bit flexible. I would say African money is very rigid. It's very metrics driven. Like the first thing they ask you is about sales, not how fancy your idea is. Like how much sales are you making? They're very revenue driven, which is a good thing, and it drives founders to actually look at the unit economics of the business. But American money is like, how big can this be? Like, don't tell me you're making $10,000 a month right now. I need this to be $100-200 million business. So show me how that looks like, and you need to articulate how you're going to get there. And obviously for us, we were like, if this is a big business that is doing $100 million in that turnover and they're struggling with this problem, then our business in Lagos is struggling with the same thing, our business in the US is struggling with the same thing. So you can actually see how the business will grow from there. So they are very flexible. So your question about like which money is flexible, American money is very bullish. European money is just in the middle. African money is extremely rigid. So you want to be very conscious in terms of the type of investors you want to have in your cap table when you're raising. You don't want to have a back and forth when you're trying to change your business model. So you want to be extremely It's like a matchmaking. It's a matchmaking process, man. Like it's like trying to find your wife. You don't want to get married to someone who is let me say inflexible,
Please don't say
right?
African.
Inflexible, like someone who is tying you to a very specific way of making a decision as the husband. You want to have some flexibility in the marriage, and I find an American money to be a very good fit for founders because they're very flexible. They tell you to go after the biggest market possible. They're not limiting you to like small dreams. They're telling you are serving Nairobi. Why not serve Africa? Why not serve West Africa? Go to South Africa. Like serve this entire market, right? But you repeat money there like validate this in Nairobi first before you scale, right? Um, so that was pretty interesting. So we actually pivoted the business, started serving enterprise customers. So we were this was like now like 2 years ago. We were like now we want to service businesses that want efficiency, businesses that want to reduce costs, because that is where automation makes sense. Automation may not make sense entirely for a small business doing it's a mom and pop store. They're barely making ends meet, and you want to charge them $30 a month for an automation product. Doesn't make sense. Even if you save them time, we used to have this joke like, oh, we'll automate this process for a mom and pop shop and save them time. So you're like, what will they use the extra time for? Right? Like, I mean, they are the shop literally. That's the only thing they're doing. Like, where will they go? Right? But if you are saving a business doing $100 million in turnover, even if you save them 6 hours a day, that's like a lot of productivity, right? Saved.
Yes.
And they are
Yes.
willing to pay literally thousands of dollars to have that problem solved. And the same business actually, we were in a meeting with them last week. Now they want us to take to their Zambia operations and Uganda operations, so it's pretty interesting. So we pivoted the business. Right now we are focused, as you said earlier, we are focused on working with medium and large businesses, both in Africa and around the world, to enable them to automate manual repetitive tasks. And the pretty amazing thing is one of the reasons why it actually came at the right time is AI had just started out and it had actually reduced the cost of solving that problem. So initially that problem was being solved by what we call RPA tools. RPA tools are robotic automation tools. I mean, I think there's maybe your bank has some of those tools. And these are tools where so initially they'll come in, they'll ask you if you're a bank, they'll ask you what process is manual in your operations. Maybe loan application, processing the loan, that loan moving from that department, going to credit control, from credit control, they're going to loan approval, whatever, all that. It's like a 10-step approval process that is done by humans. So they'll map out to a robot. So the robot will be told, if you read this stage, do this stage, do this, automate. But when it gets stuck, it gets stuck in a loop. It's not able to get itself out of that process. So you also find it's not entirely efficient as well. So it's a process. It's something that has been there for decades. But now with AI, you don't need to map a process. It can figure out something on its own and do it. So now AI tools are replacing a lot of these RPA tools. So an example of RPA tool that you might know is Power Automate by Microsoft, UiPath, Accenture has one called Newspage that a lot of big distributors in Africa use. When I was in South Africa, I discovered also something else there that Shoprite uses to process orders. It's offered also by Accenture. But medium businesses, larger businesses cannot afford $1 million per year for that tool, right? So our mission has always been like, how do we lower the cost of automation for these businesses and make it easier for them to do business. So when we went to the plant that I showed you for one of our plants, so the bigger process is right now is we've automated now the whole process of order processing. So right now our system can process a whole order end to end. So a supermarket will send in an order, an LPO. Our system is able to read the email, understand what the email is saying, download the PO, understand the items in the PO, go open the old PO, pick the items, populate them into the system, validating they are correct, alert credit control track if the order is above a certain level, move it from there, push it to warehousing, and push it to logistics, right? That whole process that 20 people used to do now can be condensed to a process for 10 people. That means if a company had 20 people in order processing, they can now just have 10 people doing it, and then the other 10 people can go to other roles like customer service or merchandising or ground operations. That means you've been able to actually help that business increase their sales. And right now we've moved now from order processing. Now we are going deep into other workflow processes for our businesses. There are now customers who want us to do for them invoice automation. They now want us to do call agent automations, where they want us to automatically call customers using the AI agents. They want us to do monitor some of their systems in terms of inefficiencies, in terms of what is currently not efficient in our system. Can we do a workflow AI agent that is able to monitor the whole process? So currently we are spinning out, I think, right now we have almost 50 workflows, and over the next coming couple of days, we've been spending sleepless nights. Now we want to release ourselves a platform that anyone can basically pay $20 a month and spin out a workflow. And right now that platform already has some of the users from the US and other markets. So for us it's about efficiency, reducing costs for our customers, and making these employees more productive. And right now we are serving some of the biggest brands in Kenya, and now right now we're expanding to South Africa and West Africa. So pretty amazing.
Well, you have mentioned South Africa a few times, so we got to talk about it now. So tell me, how has it been, taking that leap to leave East Africa and go to Southern Africa? I'm going to say that as I pour just one more here, one favorite brand and product from South Africa that I have on the desk today. But like how has the journey been? What's the new stuff that you have seen there that you have implemented back home, or what's the stuff that you brought from Kenya that you have put into the South African market that you think over time will allow you guys to compete aggressively with the entrepreneur talent that's already in South Africa, and try and get some share in that market as well?
Oh man, it's a pretty interesting perspective. It's like, okay, backdrop. One of the interesting statistics that I was reading when I was trying to find ways to get our business into the South African market. So there's this I don't know if it's a belief or it's an opinion that people have, or it's just a market state of the market. Like, there are very few businesses that expand from East Africa and go to South Africa, and there are very few businesses from South Africa that expand from South Africa to East Africa. I think there's so many, mostly because they say it's cultural differences and things like that. The only business from South Africa that most Kenyans know that is pretty successful in East Africa is MultiChoice. A lot of people here have DSTV and GoTV and all these other products. If we go to South Africa, I don't think you'll have any Kenyan brand, any big Kenyan brand that is big there. And the reason why I was actually fascinated to read about it was like, I wanted to find a footing in terms of how we are going to get into that market. Because remember, this is a market that is, in a way, it's a developed market in terms of solutions.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever product you're building here in Kenya, in some form, it already exists in the South African market. So I remember I took this trip to South Africa. Like, it was a fact-finding trip, and I think I actually went along. I was like, let me go there and just try to observe and try to learn what is happening there. Obviously, that is the time that I had some friends there. I knew some people there, so I knew my way around the market. So when I was there, I was just asking a couple of my friends questions. I had a very good friend there who really helped me get into that market. She's our mutual friend, I think you know her, and I got a lot of insights from her in terms of how the market behaves, how people there buy products, and she was able to do for me a couple of introductions. And the amazing things I learned about South Africa is, number one, brands attract brands. Like, if you're solving a big problem, and you don't have a big brand using your solution already, it's going to be very difficult to convince another person to buy that solution. So they have this thing they call brands attract brands. And number two, it's also the cultural differences. Like I remember trying to explain how the sales process in Kenya works. It's entirely different from how the sales process in like not the sales process, the LPO ordering process from a supermarket or manufacturer. It's very different slightly different in South Africa because they use some exchange in the middle that process documents. This is Shoprite. Shoprite have some solution that they currently use to process documents. I think it's offered by Vodacom, pretty public. And I remember just trying to think, okay, how do we now compete in this market where you're trying to sell a solution where there are other players in the market already, you need to find that footing, you need to find an edge. So I used that first trip just to learn. The second trip I did, we got a local person who was based out of Cape Town. We had to get someone who has like local knowledge, local understanding. They understand the buying processes, they understand the relationships. And also, like another thing about South Africa is a highly relation-driven market, especially if you are selling to large corporations. You can't just pop in and sell something. You have to be referred by someone. Either you have to be an existing supplier or you have to be referred by someone. And remember, like one of the reasons why some of these big companies in South Africa don't like buying from new suppliers is they operate as a group, right? I mean, you're from Zimbabwe, and you know most of these companies I'm pretty sure, like, if you come across any South African brand that people know, it exists within a larger group, right? So
Yes.
imagine if you've had a meeting with a manufacturer and they have to tell you, oh, we have to check with our group chief executive, IT manager. That's a whole process, man. So you have to get someone locally who understands how a group works. So you have a group that is serving the whole of South Africa, and then you have subsidiaries serving the various provinces, and then maybe you have another division that is serving another part of Johannesburg. So it's extremely structured, and either you have to have local partners who understand that structure, or you have someone who has a consultant or a local business person, a local business development person to help you break into that structure. So I went there. So we got someone on ground. He's called Enrico, a very amazing person. He lives out of Cape Town, and I told him I have to come there and you show me around. So he was like, "What I'll do to you, Bernard, is I'll set up meetings for you." So we worked within the course of 2 weeks to set up meetings with manufacturers and distributors. So he set for me a bunch of meetings with some amazing brands. In that trip, I learned a lot. I mean, I spent a lot of time in Cape Town. I spent a lot of time in Pretoria. I went to Johannesburg, just meeting with these different businesses just to understand how they operate. And when I was on ground, I was like, so this is how we need to position ourselves, this is how we need to operate. And obviously, like they also have a lot of regulation in terms of how you need to run your business there, mostly because of the black economic empowerment.
Economic empowerment
Yeah,
laws.
economic
Yeah.
empowerment law. So when you're setting up a business there, you have to be extremely conscious in terms of how you handle that. So you have to bring in people who have that local knowledge about how to structure the business so that it meets the laws, and to ensure that you are creating employment for the local economy. And we have to get someone who understands that process, right? So you remember that trip, the guy just took me everywhere, right? So it was a pivotal moment actually even in Sanifu's product development journey. We were like, if we need to make this product scale, we have to be global first. We have to think global first. Like, can someone in Durban use it? Can someone in Johannesburg use it? Can someone in Cape Town use it? Can someone in San Francisco use it? Can someone in London use it? So when you're designing the product, you're designing it with a global perspective, but with a bit of local context as well, right? So obviously we've been working with our South African lead for us to lock in some business, and we're happy that we've locked in some interesting pilots there. We have some pilots running with some of the one of the pilots that is running there is with one of the largest pharmaceutical companies, based out of Cape Town as well. They get like they have like a team of 40 clerks, and they're currently spending $500,000 on to retain those 40 clerks, and they get all this, they get almost 100,000 documents a month that get into the ERP, and they want to automate that whole process. And I remember them explaining to us like how they've been trying to solve the process with a bunch of tools and how expensive it's been. And they were like, if we're able to solve this with a local solution that is built in Africa, guys who understand how processes here work would be amazing. Because for me, I can basically, they had tried some solutions from the US, London, and like for them, they wanted someone to fly there and see their solution. They were like, we can't fly there from New York and to come and meet you guys, and we're not going to make a lot of revenue. But for me in Nairobi, I can just, over a weekend, I'm just there in 4 hours. So to them, it was a no-brainer. I think like one of the key things that really helped us to understand that market is to be there physically, to just understand the dynamics, to be with locals, hire a local team, have someone who understands decision-making process, have someone who was that local dialect, right? There's always someone that where you need to just, you need to know someone's sweet spot in when you're selling to them. So you need to know what is that thing that they care about, and you can't do that when you're seated in Nairobi, right? So that market has taught us a lot, and we're still learning, you know.
That is quite fascinating. I'm sure we'll continue following the journey and hearing how you'll be doing in the South African market. Southern Africa is a pretty lucrative part of the continent to do business in. So if you come there, we welcome you with both hands. Just don't come to Zimbabwe. We have much more aggressive competition. You might not survive. You might lose your money to savvy entrepreneurs like some of us. But anyway, let's go back to East Africa, and take sort of like a macro view for a while. What is the biggest opportunity right now that's happening within the East African region? I mean, I think when people think of East Africa, there's always a semblance for tech, at least for Nairobi, and then there seems to be a lot of agriculture and processing happening. Obviously in Kenya, in Uganda, there's a lot of agriculture that happens there, but also there's each and every time I visit East Africa, I see that it almost seems like there's a construction boom that's happening, and people are building new houses, roads are being built, and tourism obviously is going on. So a couple of sectors that I've seen where there seems to be activity. But what are you seeing right now in the market? For startups and for young people who might be trying to solve this unemployment problem.
Yeah, I mean, currently in East Africa, there are lots of things happening in almost every sector. There's something always happening, something new that is happening. I'll start with tech where I am at the moment. Obviously, I have to give it up to the Kenyan government. I mean, it's one of the most efficient governments in terms of access to services, because remember, they have digitized like 50,000 services right now. Like right now from my phone, I can register my business and get my certificate within 24 hours, right? If I want to pay for,
Amazing.
if I want to pay for some, actually my passport, literally, I can literally apply for it from my phone. I don't need to go to some embassy, like to an office in town for me to do it. I can just apply everything from my phone, pay, and then go for the interview, right?
Can you get your marriage certificate on your phone as
Yes.
well if you decide to get
Yes,
married?
actually, you can
Really?
actually literally
That
go
is
there. You can
now
go to the
that
portal, say apply for marriage certificate, and they'll tell you it's ready. Go and pick it up.
what about the reverse? Can you divorce on the phone as well and have the marriage certificate
Oh man,
cancelled
that
without going to the
no,
government
that
office?
one no. I'm pretty sure that one you can't. That one you have to go and file, man. That one before you do it on the phone, you have to go
You
and
have to go
file.
to the courts.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. So you can get married now on the phone in Kenya, but divorce you still have to go to the court to justify why you intend to separate. Okay, but tell me, you were explaining something more
Yeah,
important.
definitely. So I have to give it up to the Kenyan government. Like a lot of investment has gone into tech. Remember, this is a system that is already used in other. We have exported literally this system to other parts of the world. They're using it.
Yeah.
I think Estonia is one of the countries. I think they're using part of it, and some other countries in Eastern Europe they're using the system. And other countries like Rwanda now are following suit. Tanzania, and East Africa, also South Africa. I can see they already. There's a friend of mine I normally follow on Instagram. I saw he was appointed as the head of the presidential unit for presidential delivery unit for the digitalization program, and I always see him posting daily about. Actually, you should check him out. You should have him on the pod. He's called Melvin Lubega. He's a partner at Brigger Partners. The guy built one of the most successful I think it was a learning management system in Africa. He exited the business for good money, and right now he's trying to. He's an angel investor. He's an investor, and he's doing an amazing thing. So I normally follow him on Instagram, pretty amazing thing. So he's also now getting into government to also digitalize the process. So in terms of like digitalization in government, in Kenya, they have done amazing work, man. So that also actually set the precedent for like other parts of the economy. Like right now, everyone is literally trying to build something that is going to make process more efficient. Most companies right now, they're trying to also be tech fast in any process they're trying to bring on board. Like right now, before they hire anyone, they're like, can tech solve this problem, right? So there are lots of solutions coming currently out of Kenya, and I'm actually happy that a bunch of these solutions they are already getting into other parts of the country, of the continent. Like right now, people are thinking, can this solution be used in Lagos? Can this solution be used in South Africa? Like right now, I had a meeting with a logistics client from UAE just last week, and they were referred by one of our customers. They wanted to solve the order management process in their logistics business, and one of the reasons why they trusted us from Kenya is like they know that Kenya is actually a leader in tech. Actually, even in the world, actually we are market leader in fintech, and they know that solutions built in Kenya, they're solid, right? So that effort by government has actually built a lot of trust for solutions coming out of the country. So that's one. And two, like other sectors in the economy, like you mentioned about construction, housing, logistics, all these industries, they're also becoming more efficient because now they rely on tech for them to be able to scale. Like right now, you mentioned about construction. Right now, the government is doing housing, right? If you come to Nairobi, you will see construction everywhere, right? This government is putting up affordable housing units. Right now, they're building a stadium for the tournament, African Tournament Cup happening in East Africa. I think it's rotating around the city in East Africa. So we're building a huge stadium in Nairobi. And you go there, the first thing you see is everyone is on their tablets. Like they're putting tech first, right? So like right now, if you go to any affordable housing facility in Nairobi that the government is putting up, it's entirely digitized. Like for you to apply for the house, you have to go apply online. Payment is online. That means they have eliminated corruption, a bit of corruption there, and you can literally get your house within hours by just applying online, and then you are located. Even the tax system, also in Kenya, is one of the best in the African market actually because it's entirely automated. So all that has brought in efficiency in other departments, in other areas. So if you go deep into other places outside tech now, talking about construction or logistics or telecom. Let me talk about telecom. I mean, like if you look at the telecommunication industry in Kenya, it's actually pretty efficient. If you look at investments made by Liquid Telecom from your home country in Zimbabwe, I mean, what's the name of the guy?
Strive,
yes. Strive has done. Strive actually invested a lot of money building Liquid Telecom in Kenya, and I think he did a bit of work from the subsea cable from Mombasa all the way to Nairobi, and he was one of the guys who actually invested in that infrastructure, right? And right now there are so many companies that are trying now to get that infrastructure, the telecom infrastructure, into villages, into suburban areas. Like right now, I'm living 40 kilometers outside Nairobi, and you can see how good the internet is. Now this is fiber internet, right? It's literally villages are going to get fiber internet, right? So if you're passing through the highways in Kenya, you see all these people digging up the sections for where the fiber cables will be laid out. So that means if you go to any bank right now, and you tell them you have an order from the government for you to lay down fiber optic cable, they'll finance you almost immediately, right? Because they know it's something like it's an industry that is growing. So there are a lot of companies that are taking out loans to build this infrastructure, which means also like it's actually a good sign that sectors of the economy are working together, right? And that is amazing for you don't want to one industry is here and another one is here, so they're not working together. So that is one thing I have to give it up for how the Kenyan economy has sort of structured itself. Like if they see something is happening in tech, financial institutions also start now lending out to tech companies. If there is construction going on, banks also reduce their rates for guys who are taking out loans for development or for large infrastructure projects. And also like and there are also lots of companies that are setting up base here because of the construction boom. I mean, you've been to Nairobi, you've seen the Global Trade Center, how massive it is. It's built by the Chinese, I think. I think it's by Avic International, and they were like, "We believe Nairobi will be the financial capital for Africa in the coming years." I mean, also, it's not a false statement because right now, the UN is moving the entire staff to Nairobi. I think you saw the news. All the 2,000 or so
Yes.
staff from the UN are moving to Nairobi because it's a fast-growing city. And you can imagine the amount of push it will give to the economy. 2,000 people moving into a new city. You can imagine you will have more construction of units coming up. You'll have
High
higher
spending.
spending, exactly. The foreign direct exchange is going to be pretty good. Stabilization of the Kenyan shilling will also be pretty strong. But also there are downside effects because like if there are 2,000 people going into a city, rent is going to be pretty high for those areas, right? So it might push out some guys who are able to afford
Yeah, yeah,
those
yeah.
places. So generally like Nairobi alone has a lot of things happening, and if you're a smart entrepreneur, you pretty know where you can fit in. So if you're in construction, you'll find something. If you're in tech, you'll find something. If you are in insurance, you'll find something. If you are in logistics, you'll find something. Also, to just mention something in logistics, when they were doing the fiber cable that I was telling you about, I mean, it's also following the new SGR, because they know like a bunch of businesses will be set up along that SGR, the standard gauge railway. You can also see how that is actually working together. Like if you're putting up a standard gauge railway, then technically you need to put fiber along the way because it will spur up economic growth in those areas. So
Yes.
those parts of the economy, there's a beautiful ripple effect happening in that space. So if you look at logistics, the amount of cargo now moving from Mombasa to Kampala because of that standard gauge railway is massive. I think it's doubled because now there is efficiency at the port. Right now they're building another port in the coastal region of Kenya. It's going to be one of the biggest in Africa actually, in terms of size or in terms of containers processed. That actually creates, if you're getting into logistics business, it's going to be a good field day for you because you're able to move more cargo from the coast of Mombasa to the other parts of East Africa. Because remember, Mombasa serves other areas. It serves Kampala in Uganda. It serves Congo partially, the part of Congo that is slightly into Uganda. It serves South Sudan. It partially serves Tanzania as well because their port is not sometimes doesn't handle a lot of cargo. So you can imagine like just building that port, the amount of opportunities that spurs into the economy. So it's a pretty amazing time to be in East Africa generally. But also, of course, there are other things, there are other challenges in Kenya as well. The government is not as efficient as we believe it should. I mean, you saw what happened last year in terms of demonstrations. So we're just hoping that things will just straighten up. But the economy right now is doing pretty well. Despite the inflation, I think there are lots of things going on.
Let's talk about your angel investing, right? And you also over time moved into angel investing and started helping some entrepreneurs their businesses building, and you sit on a couple of boards and you mentor a couple of entrepreneurs. How is that going? And would you say, I think what I'm very interested in is figuring out whether you think there is a specific space for Africans who might live in the diaspora and they are told, well, you put your money in some stock market in the diaspora that grows at 5%, or they could try to experiment putting their money in a stock market back home that might also grow at a faster rate. But maybe they could be interested in saying, is there a platform for someone sitting in London, or someone sitting in San Francisco, where they say, I'm African, I want to see if there's a platform where I can go and support other young African entrepreneurs, and I want to put in a piece of my savings, and see whether that works out or not, especially if the businesses have as much impact as the businesses that you work on and the businesses that I know that you support and mentor.
Yeah, that's actually it's pretty interesting because like I've had a bunch of discussions. Like I mean, I do a bunch of angel investments. I don't currently I don't do anything above $1,000. These are investments that I'm just doing from my own disposable income if I come across an amazing project, because I've been there before, and when you come across an interesting project that someone is working on, and it's a passionate founder, and they want some little money for them to be able to push forward, I mean, I'm happy to support where I can. But I do this through something I've set up with my brother, where we channel the funds from. So all the projects I'm currently doing, or I'm currently investing in, we currently now have a portfolio of around five businesses we have. And all the like four of them are in tech. One is in retail. Obviously, one is a family business, and we put in money in there. I think I've told you this before.
Yeah.
And the reason why we obviously channel money through that vehicle is like, because my brother now over time wants to transition and manage that whole thing by himself. Because he's able to oversee operations. Like this week, he had a meeting with one of the startups we're operating. They're currently trying to do a product with one of the largest insurance companies in Kenya. And they have had a couple of partnerships, and they needed me to be in the meeting for me to give some insights. And of course, like using my own background, I'm pretty much able to tell whether something will work or not. Like in terms of the probability of the thing succeeding, I'm able to tell. Even if it fails, that's fine. I always know like one will probably work out. So you always know like 1 out of your 10 investments is the one that will give you all the returns. So sort of the 80-20 rule, like 80% of your returns will come from 20% of your investments. So I always view it the same way. Like I'm like, if I'm able to, like if I can have, like I always ask myself like, this is money I'm willing to lose, right? And I'm going to do it over time. This is not something that I want to do and stop. I want to do it over 10, 20 years, so that over time it can become like a family fund or family type of managed fund. That's why I'm really extremely keen in terms of the projects I do, and I always go into areas that I understand quite well, so that I'm able to make an informed judgment. Like right now, for example, I won't do anything, say in transport, and I always like put in money where they scale. Like, can this business serve 1 million people at some point? I'm not a fan of brick and mortar businesses. We only have one business in our portfolio, which is the family business. Again, it's a brick and mortar retail business, and we are trying to run some experiments through that business for us to understand how some products will fit into that type of setting. So once that is understood, then we're able to know how that scales up to other businesses. So like for that business, family business, the vision we have for it is for us to build some sort of 7-Eleven for the Kenyan market. I think 7-Eleven, they're very. This 7-Eleven came out of Japan, and they're small convenience stores where you can basically find everything you need, but you don't need to walk 10 aisles for you to find it. It's an equivalent of a department store in the US, where you go there and it's a small setup, nicely done, nicely branded, professionally run, and probably you have 12, 15 chains of that nature. So 7-Eleven, these guys are doing $2-3 billion a year in revenue, and these are like from small stores, right? And for us, we were like, we need to do something on a smaller scale for us to be able to test, like, if like what would be a fancy way to do a shop. Like Kenya, you have a shop where you have like a mom and pop shop, like it's probably someone's there in the shop, and they're there. It's an enclosure, you cannot walk in. So if you are to reimagine how that type of setup can be, how can it be, right? Obviously, you'll have a normal retail section. You'll have a financial services section as a must because there's agents in banking in Kenya. So you need to have a financial services section. You need to have a section for someone sitting down to have coffee, whatever. So how would that look like? So you do as a very, we did as a very small store for us to be able to run an experiment for us to see, okay, if we were to do 15 of these stores, how would they look like? So for us, even if we are doing that as a brick and mortar business, we were at some point, we want to have that running as 20, 50, 20, 30 stores at some point. And I also saw this in South Africa as well. So Pick n Pay, I saw Pick n Pay actually, they also have very small stores in some areas, like it's like a Pick n Pay store, but in a small petrol station, right? And it's making good revenue and it's working pretty well. I haven't seen that in Kenya, and I thought like, why not? This looks like an exciting venture, and retail in Africa is not going to die at any point. Retail in Africa is currently rising, so whoever is getting into that space to build amazing business models, they're pretty much open. So so short answer in terms of how we run our angel investment. That's how we structured it with my brother. So he's sort of doing it full time, and we want him to continue doing it over time. So in terms of going back to the question of the diaspora, the reason I gave that backdrop is for me to contextualize my answer. So, like if someone is in the diaspora and they're thinking of where to put in their money, I think number one, you need to be extremely diligent in terms of the industries that you want to get into. Don't get into an industry because you think that's where much of the money is currently being made. Like, for example, you might be told, a relative might call you, one of the fine days, they tell you, by the currently people are making a lot of money in this industry in Kenya. Can you put in? Like there was a time for quail eggs. Like quail eggs were like a craze. A lot of Kenyans lost money in that area, right? So you can imagine someone calling you out of the blues and you're like, oh, you're my
That
cousin.
happened in Zimbabwe as well, surprisingly, these coral
Oh,
eggs.
you
It
did?
got all the way down. Yeah, it did. It did. People lost
That
money
was
in coral
crazy.
eggs in Zimbabwe.
Yeah, that was crazy. So
Yeah.
you can imagine you're in New York and you have your job and someone calls you like, oh, you've been looking to invest in Africa. Right now we have quail eggs. And are you open to put in money for you to get a return? Honestly, if you are going to put in money in that thing, and you don't deserve to be helped. Like it's like you're not a long-term investor, right? You're just a gambler.
Yeah.
So always look at spaces where you can make a good return and you don't need to overanalyze. I think number one, look at spaces where you actually passionate about, or a space where at least every day you are using a product that comes from that space, or you come across their news, somewhere, because it keeps you informed, right? For example, if you are a nurse in the US, for example, like we have a lot of nurses in the US, like
Mhm.
it might make sense for you to invest in a small business in Kenya that does home nursing, or a small clinic that has ambitions to grow locations, because you understand the space. Like, so when you're having a meeting with the person running the clinic, you're able to ask the right questions. So always look at places where you understand, but also in terms of like generic investments, obviously we have things like stocks. The Nairobi Stock Exchange has some good returns. It hasn't done so well in the past few years, but right now it's getting back to its feet. Obviously that's when you just need to get a broker who knows their stuff and they're able to put in money either into stocks or treasury bills or bonds, and they're able to manage that portfolio for you. There are a bunch of very trusted brokers in Nairobi at the moment, and the good thing is most of them are run now by banks. So you'll have a bank has a division that is managing that division. So if you're Kenyan in the US and you already have a Kenyan banking partner, just ask them to open. I think it's called a checking account, where like every time you're sending money to that account, they cut a percentage. It goes to your
Brokerage.
investment account. So you don't need to make it like an expense, like just make it automatic, right? Every time you're sending money to that account, they just cut maybe 30%. They put it into some vehicle instruments. So that's when you don't need to be an expert, because just money that you're willing to put in. And also, like, you also want to you don't want to put in money where, like, at least from what I've seen other people do, you don't want to put in money where you want to cash it out quickly, like maybe you're in the US and you're coming you're coming to Nairobi next year, and you want to use that to fund your trip. It's going to be very hard. Like it can't work. Like I've seen some other Kenyans doing it, like, oh, I put in money in some project. I wanted to come to Kenya for holiday. I wanted that project to pay for my expenses, but you didn't know the people behind the project, so it becomes really hard.
Yeah.
And now, right now, I've seen also an interesting thing happening with the guys in diaspora, which I think is really fantastic. A lot of now Kenyans in diaspora are investing through syndicates, where especially for tech startups, where you have like I think I know one being run by a former guy from Stripe. It's called Hawk, HOAQ. It's basically a group of Africans in diaspora, and they tell you we want to take part in an angel round. There's this startup that is raising $200,000, and we thought as a fund we can put in 20K. Are you open to putting in your $1,000? Hawk actually has returned, I think, 50x to their members because of the exit of Paystack to Stripe. You can see like anyone who put in $1,000 when Paystack got acquired, I think they got $10,000 or $15,000 back. That's like more than 10x return. Because you put in money into the syndicate basically makes decisions what to do. If you put in money, it's like saying, I think from what I've seen, how they do it is like every month you commit how much goes to the fund. You can say every month I want to be sending you guys $100, $200, $1,000, $5,000. They don't have a limit, and obviously, once the fund gets invested and they make a good exit, they prorate the returns to you. So if you put in $10,000, they prorate the returns accordingly. So that actually has worked quite well for Kenya, like guys in diaspora who want to take part in Africa's tech space. And I think also that has also worked in other places. Like currently the estate where I currently stay, like part of it was funded by Africans diaspora, guys who wanted to do real estate. Like you pool your funds, you get a reputable real estate company in Kenya, and they set up the project for you. Or you go through your bank. You go through a bank, you give them the money, they manage the develop the project for you. That's for guys who have interest in real estate. So I've seen it work in real estate really well because you basically get a construction company, you pay them, they put an estate for you guys, and then they manage it for you, and then they give you the returns. So you get your normal 10-12% per year returns as a real estate investor, which is typical of real estate, right? So that has worked really well for guys who have an interest in real estate. I mean, the other areas where guys in diaspora can put in money in, but those are my best three options. Putting money in a syndicate, especially if you want to take a risk, because a syndicate is sort of trying to take a risk in a new industry. You can also pull in funds through groups like the one for real estate. You can do it especially through people you trust. If you work in nursing, as I mentioned, you want to put in money in a nursing clinic that is coming up. Also, if you want to, you can also fund startups directly. I've seen some other guys who take part in rounds of African startups that are raising, right? You find a company is raising $200,000 and the minimum entry price is like $1,000. I mean, if you live in the US or whatever country, $1,000 may not be a lot. You can just write a check and forget about it, right? So you always know, like,
Not sure about forgetting about it, but yes, you can write a check.
you get back. That's something that you always say, like, just write a check and forget about it, right? I saw this podcast. I don't know, it's a popular investor who wrote a check either to a crypto company or something. So he wrote like $2,000 checks. These guys were desperate for money. They were raising like $200,000 for $1.5 million valuation or something, and they were desperate. So he wrote some money and then he forgot about it. And then when those guys sold the company, he got an email like, you are going to be paid $1 million from your check. He was like, I wrote a check, I forgot about these guys. I'm getting $1 million from the Blues. So they normally say like, for these smaller checks, just write a check and forget about it, right? Don't be on the phone.
That sounds like a really good way to live life. I mean, if the listeners are gonna take anything away from this pod, is just write a check and forget it. No. I mean, to be fair, right? Like, someone who is living in in one of these big cities, New York, they might be going out, in a night and spending $300 on food and alcohol, or even $500. So if you can spend $500 on a night out, then certainly you can skip 2 nights, write a check and forget about it. And then, who knows, in 5 years that gets acquired by some big company, and then you get to be given $20,000 or $50,000 back. So it might not be that bad.
Definitely check out if listeners are able to check out this investment company in Nigeria called Silver Oak Holdings, I think. They do investments for startups, and I think some of their members are Africans in diaspora. And they released a report where they said their fund 2 years, I think 2 years, they have returned 50%, 50x to their members. I think they have 2 exits for their companies, and they're able to get a return. So you're right, like, and the good thing with companies in Africa, like, if someone is raising, you can find like the minimum entry price is like what you said, like the $500 you're currently spending for 9. You can just write a check and forget about. So you imagine if you do 10 checks in a year, that's just $5,000 and forget about it, right? Just write, log them somewhere in an Excel on your portfolio tracker or whatever, and then forget about it. And then just check in after 1 year. You don't need to be on the founders net every day asking about sales reports, right? You don't want to do it. Just write a check, forget about it, and you'll thank yourself over 10 years. If you do that consistently over a 5-year period, man, you'll have what, 200, 300 companies in your portfolio. Are you going to tell me, like, out of the 200 companies, you can't get a good return? By law of probability, you will get a good return, right? So
Yes.
you should look at things that way.
That is interesting. And taking a different view from this, I mean, it's all well, nice and good when the money is being found out, I guess, from the investors. But if you are trying to, counsel someone who is an entrepreneur who is starting, how do they manage, accepting money and also holding on to making sure that they have control, like the equity dilution part? I understand in the Western world, founders have found ways of being creative about this. You create a certain class of shares that have super voting majority, and you can never lose control of your company. So you give people economic power, but not essentially political power of running the enterprise. What is happening in African tech startups as of that? Like how people, founders are holding off the fort and trying to make sure that they still retain control, because it's great if you're making money, but then if your vision diverges and you get fired from your company, like Steve Jobs got fired from Apple, I mean, it might not be great, right, when the investors start pushing you out and getting impatient.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one sad truth we need to know as an entrepreneur, like whether in Africa or near the market, at some point you lose control. So it's a matter of
Right.
when. So you just want to you want to delay that as much as possible, and at least until your vision is sort of realized. I think there are extremely few companies in the world that can create a class of shares that gives you certain powers. Even if you are 3% owner, you can still overrule the others. Just like Mark Zuckerberg, he's right now he's what, a 4% owner in Facebook, but you can literally overrule all votes. So you create a class of shares that gives you that political power, as you called. I think it's a mix of, because that class of shares gives you political power, which overrules now the economic desires of your shareholders. So you can basically rule everyone out, right? So there are very few companies that are able to have that level of autonomy. So I think probably in the world, there are only two, just Elon Musk and Zuckerberg. And I can't really know like anyone else who is able to be given that power. Even all these companies in San Francisco that are raising millions of dollars in rounds, they're diluted like probably by their Series C or something, so they lose control. Only that now, the only way they're able to maintain control is because they're in good books with investors, so their opinion counts. So you only rely on goodwill for you to be able to get your way with the board or your way with the shareholders. So you just have to know consciously when every round you are raising us, even if you're doing like okay, say for example you are a small guy, you are starting out, you have an idea, you build the product, and you want to do your family and friends and fools round. They normally call it a family, friends, and fools round. Triple F. The reason why they call it fools is because the person who just wants to give you money, because you're my
Write a
friend
check
and
and
I
forget
want to
about it.
support you. Yeah, let me just give you money so you don't call me a bad person. So they fall under the fools category. So even if you're doing a $10,000 round, not even $10,000, like $5,000, and you want to go to your dad, tell him I have this amazing idea. Could you give me some money and for me to do something? And your dad will give you something, and your dad or whatever group you go to they'll give you that $5,000. They'll tell you we will need 49% of your business, right? Because for them they don't think as investors, right? Will you say no? These are just like 49%
Well,
of the business,
I mean,
right?
if the family, friends, and fools round takes away 49%, what do you have to offer to the next series of fundraising? That's gonna be tough.
I mean, it's gonna be tough, right? So you have to know, okay, I could say yes. Because, okay, what you do at that point is you can say, okay, yes, I can give you for 9%, but I have a caveat. If I bring in an additional investor, you have to be diluted, right? Of course, you
Yep.
put that in because you need their money anyway. So,
Yep.
so by the mere fact that you say yes at that point, you've already lost control to this family and friends full round. Because if the business, if at some point you want to change the business, they'll tell you no, return our money, right? So
Yep. Yep.
there's nothing you can do at that point. You just have to go with their way. So you have to be extremely diligent in terms of like how you handle the round so that you don't lose control. So you want to go to people if you're doing if you want to do a good family friends and friends round, go to people who can basically afford to lose that money. So it can be
How
your
much do
aunt.
you give those? How much do you give these triple Fs in general, as a general rule?
I mean, in Kenya, I've seen people raising between $5,000 to $10,000 for this triple F round. And these are people who can basically afford to lose that money even if the business doesn't work out. So it could be your friend, it could be your rich uncle or whatever. Even if the business doesn't work out, it won't harm them. It won't change anything in their life really. So so you want to go to those types of people because they won't ask you about any sales report. Even if you tell them I'm going to raise $5,000 for 10%, they'll say yes, right? So don't go to people who will take for 9% of your business. So that way, so you want to be conscious that way, like a triple F round, I want to do 5% so that I have control of the business. And then you do you do an angel, a proper angel round now where you have an angel who's going to give you $50,000 to $100,000. In practicality, like for angels, they're going to give you maximum $50,000. So this is someone who is like maybe they have done some work in some industry for a long time and they're retired and they want to write small checks to startups. It's also extremely rare in Africa, but there are people who write small checks. Like Kenya, we have a few guys here and there, especially guys who are in tech in the early stages. Like in Kenya, we have two popular guys. One is called Ken Joroge. I think he was the founder of Cellulant. Cellulant was one of the very first tech companies in Kenya that did a lot of government projects. So the guy did pretty well. So he's writing some checks. And one is also called I think Masharia from 7C. So he's doing some amazing work. These are guys who can write checks to you and they are willing to lose that money as well. So they're not so keen on control. So places where you start to feel an itch of control is when you're doing your actual seed round. So you want to raise $500,000 to $1 million thereabout, and you at that point you know you're going to give away at least 30% of the business. So if you do 30% plus the others that you've been giving out, you might find out by the time you're doing your seed round, you're giving out 40%. So if you're not keen enough in terms of planning the round, by the time you're doing your seed round, you might find yourself giving away 50% of your business. So you need to be extremely conscious even from the first round, especially if you are a seasoned entrepreneur. So you want to be very good at negotiating. Either you have a very strong business case which gives you a high valuation as a business, so it gives the investors like it gives them a higher valuation in which you can convert. So because if you're doing say $200,000 at a $1 million valuation, that means they're going to take 5% of the business, right? If you're doing $200,000 at a $10 million valuation, I think that's going to be what 0.5% or something. So
Yeah.
you want to obviously you want to do a valuation which makes sense at that point, but always go for they always say, like, this is something we've learned from YC and the other investors we have, like, as an entrepreneur, always take the money. Always take the money. If there's someone willing to give you money, always take the money. Just figure out the terms, even if they want control. figure out how you need to work out the aspects of control. But by the time you're doing your Series A, most businesses have already lost control in the board. Only that now they rely on the goodwill of the board for them to run the business as they want to. In Africa, I haven't seen anyone creating a special class of shares that gives them special powers. And most investors don't like it because they are like, why do you want to do that? Actually, there's one company in Africa that has done that. I wouldn't want to mention them. It's pretty popular. They're IPOing soon. They're in the fintech space. I think you know who they are. The founder created. I think the founders figured out a way to create some class of shares, which favored him, which is why it hasn't been pushed out. So
Yep.
there
Yep.
are very few cases where that happens. But by the time you're doing your Series A, you've already lost control and you only rely on goodwill, which is why they always say, as a founder, just work on the goodwill, don't be evil, and you wouldn't have like issues of control at all. Just build a business that you exit about, and you wouldn't have issues with investors about control. Even if they have control, they'll usually let you run the business the way you want.
Interesting, interesting. And in terms of, just you, and we've talked about how you're mentoring other people, but is there anyone else who you bounce heads with? You have coffee periodically, within Nairobi to sort of get ideas on where things could be going, or do you bury yourself in books and read something? What do you do? Like, where does your motivation come from?
Oh man, I think I was a bit lucky. Like, I got a mentor when I was doing the Safaricom thing.
Hmm.
Um, I think if you go to my LinkedIn profile, my cover picture there is a picture of me holding a Kenyan flag, receiving something. I think if you go to my LinkedIn, you will see my cover image. That was an image taken in Bangkok, actually. I was in Bangkok in 2016. I had won some students award thing that was being sponsored by a certain students organization. There's a global organization called Entrepreneurs Organization. If you open it, you will see it's a huge global organization which basically has a group of investors from all over the world, and they have local chapters. So that organization runs a competition in universities across the world where they check the best idea, and then like they check they call them student entrepreneurs. Like if you're doing something amazing in campus, we'll hold a local competition. Whoever wins, you have an all expense paid trip to global finals. So our year it was Bangkok. I went there, and the person who was leading the Kenyan competition was a guy called Jamie Pujara. Like Jamie was my mentor for that program, and the guy is one of the very first. He's the guy who built a platform called Buy Rent Kenya. It was the very first property listing websites in Kenya. He sold that business to One Africa Media for some good amount, and that money eventually pushed him into real estate. And he's now the chairman of that organization. Actually, he's now the global chair for Entrepreneurs Organization. They are now have, I think, 56 chapters across the world. So he's now the president actually of that organization. So he's my mentor. So I've been with him for 6 years. Since that time, up to the time he's been elected, he's been my mentor, and he's based in Nairobi. So often now, like I was doing a check-in with him like 2 weeks ago, just doing this catch up in terms of how we've been, and the mentorship with him is always he's mentoring the person, not your business. So he's
Right.
trying, and I've always found that to be the type of mentorship I want. Like you don't want someone who is mentoring you right now for the business you do. You want someone who can mentor you in the long term, despite whatever business you're doing. Because they are 10 steps ahead of you. They're able to give you basically generic advice, and it can apply whether in your relationships or marriage or business. But for him, actually, is more on the business side. So I meet with him regularly over coffee. We have a chat. I ask him how he was able to sell his business. He gives me all the tips, always giving me tips about how to build a team. He's currently now into investing as well. So whenever I feel like I'm down in terms of business, I call him, and he always says like, I'm going to give you business advice as a person, not towards your business, and then towards your business, you're the one to choose the decision to make. I just want to give you life advice with regard to this situation. So I always love his
Right. Right.
perspective. His perspective in terms of even when I was transitioning from Onesha now to Patika, he's actually the guy who helped me make that transition. So I think having mentors like those very close to you is critical. And of course, I also have my other guys in Nairobi. We have a Y Combinator group in Nairobi where we oftentimes meet and exchange ideas. I have other smaller groups that I normally go to just to see how other people are thinking. But I would say that guy from EOR and Y Combinator and our small founder groups, they're probably the most critical ones. So I just like keeping them small and high quality, you know.
That is fair. And what is I know maybe the weekend slows down slightly for you, but you have since you graduated out of university, you have not actually done a lot of formal employment 9 to 5, but
Yeah.
which means to live your life and achieve everything that you have done, you have done it with your own self-imposed discipline. How does that come along? Like, is there a typical day, or because you're just running a lot of things and deciding what to do, it always runs around and you have to keep track of everything with your calendar? How do you manage that? And at the end of the day or at the end of the week, what do you do to relax and unwind? I know there's a lot of things, and I'm keeping you away from many good things happening in Nairobi right now, but tell us a little bit about that.
I mean, yeah, I mean that is obviously, like, as an entrepreneur who's running a growing business, like, you're always, even if you're taking a break, you're always thinking about your business, what you can do. Even if I'm in this podcast, an idea might hit me and then just note it down. So you are never always on a break. So you're always like having this continuous run of ideas in terms of what you're doing. So that means, like, sometimes you might have a very organized day, and then sometimes you can have a very random day because something might hit you at 12 noon and you decide to focus on that thing for the rest of the day. So I love that flexibility. But oftentimes I usually have like a set of things I need to do in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening. So in the morning, I love doing creative stuff and something interesting for our business, for Sanifu. In the evening, I prefer doing more of administrative tasks, like something that I don't need to think about. Like, for example, sales is not really, doesn't require a lot of creativity. So I tend to keep much of my afternoon a bit flexible. Um, so pretty much that's how my week. So like, I would say from six a.m. in the morning to like 6 p.m. in the evening, I'm doing the Sanifu business. In the morning, sometimes I wake up early, sometimes I don't. I don't like tying myself to like I need to wake up at any specific time because like I just want I like keeping myself flexible. I don't keep any alarm. If I wake up at any time, I just get into the like sometimes I might wake up and then I check the time. I'm like, oh, it's 3 a.m. I just get into doing stuff. And sometimes I wake up, I'm like, oh, it's 7 a.m. I just get into doing work. But I try to keep that 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. in the evening time for Sanifu. And then obviously after that, I also have other family stuff I need to do. I look at the other things I'm doing on the side, the angel investments we have. I have some calls with entrepreneurs just to ask them how the business is doing, where can be of value, who do I need to introduce them to, like, because when you're investing in these guys, you need to help them get business. Like I normally ask them, do you need me to introduce you to someone else? Do you need me to introduce you to someone in this business for you to figure out something, or for you to make this deal happen? So
Yes.
I do that like in the after hours of the afternoon, right? I give them heat. I can call them at 11 p.m. Like, I'm calling you, but that is the time I have to. That's the only time I have to call you. So I try to keep that schedule consistent so that my mind is sort of trained to always work. The reason why I keep that consistency is because even if when I'm on travel, I know that there's some things I can do in the car when I'm driving. Like right now, I know like there's some calls I can make when I'm driving somewhere, right? Because I know like this time I should be doing this thing. Or when I get to a country, I know I don't need to refer to my schedule for me to know what I need to be doing. So by the time I'm in a country, I know like this time I need to be doing this. So I just get into it. So I always try to keep that schedule a bit rigid. And when it gets broken, I actually struggle to make my day productive a bit. Like, if something breaks that schedule, I struggle to sort of settle my mind to do it. But anyway, I just end up just doing the normal administrative work. I mean, on weekends nowadays, I try to keep it a very flexible. One thing I've come to realize, like, especially if when you grow, you hit a certain age, you're like, you need to pay attention to other things in life, especially your social life. You need to start thinking about building a family and things like that. So you start sort of now dividing your time on weekends for you to spend time with friends and family, and and um, and if you're seeing someone, you go out with them, you know. So you also start sort of finding that balance. By the time you're getting to Monday, your mind is a bit fresh. Actually, it's sort of like gets you out of that world a bit, you know. Um,
Mhm.
and by the time you're, say for example, if you're doing work from Monday to Sunday, man, like your mind will get used to monotony, which is what I used to do at some point. But right
Yeah.
now, when I've like weekends, I keep them a bit flexible. Like on a weekend, I can just decide to drive to the place I took you to, just to go and see the client, right? And during that,
Yes.
I
Yes.
can take someone there. Like I can drive with my friend, or I can drive there with someone I'm seeing, you know, just like a fun trip. But I also feel like I'm still working because I'm going there to just go and check it
That
out.
is
So
that.
so so weekends I keep it flexible, family, friends, and social life. And investors right now are telling us to now put our health first, because this is something you're doing for 10 years, man. You want to be alive when you're doing a good exit, for you to get your dividends, you know.
That is the right way to put it. I was gonna ask about entrepreneurs and dating in Nairobi, but it looks like you have already told us that as you grow older as an entrepreneur, you might need to look at that as well to make sure that that's not neglected.
Yeah.
But you travel to up country a few times every now and then, and you travel around Nairobi. But is there a city, whether in the country or outside? You've been spending some time in Cape Town and Joburg, but is there a favorite city that if the investors told you, you know what, we need you to take a month off to go and refresh, where would you go?
Oh, man, my passion is always good. Um,
Hmm.
my passion is like it's like 100 kilometers from Nairobi.
Hmm.
Um, so that's like a very touristy place that a lot of people love going. It has a lot of lodges, there's a lot of lakes, there's a lot of nice sightseeing. So it's a place you can go and come back if you're in Nairobi. It's literally like 2 hours drive from Nairobi.
Yeah.
Um, that is my favorite place. Even when some of the investors are in town, I always take them there just to breeze a bit, you know. So that is like a lot of founders actually go there to just cool off. So if you go there in a typical weekend, you'll probably find each other, all of you there. So you're like, you're a guy from this company. You just know everyone is there just to cool off, you know. It's a pretty amazing place, actually.
Interesting. And the other part as well that I haven't explored that you actually do, you do a little bit of volunteering yourself. On top of mentoring people, you have done some work at the Kikuyu Hospital, the Jackson Children's Home. I understand, having a wholesome experience is important, but what would you say there to other young people about volunteering in general and how it can help you meet new people, meet new business partners, or even just feel good about helping other people in the community?
Yeah, I mean that's like one of the, I think, things, like you also find joy when you're doing it when you get old as well, because you also want to, you don't want to be extremely capitalistic in your life. You want to have a bit of it's not really socialism or community. Like you want to be part of the community and give back. I'm not a huge fan of NGOs per se. Like I think it's a flawed model. I think a lot of work can be done. A lot of the NGO work can be done by CSR, like these companies that, like, basically like a mini NGO within a company, like the CSR division. Maybe it's 4 people who are running it, or so some companies have a whole division for CSR. A lot of
Yeah.
that work can be done by CSR teams. So the reason why I normally like volunteering is, like, I just go there. And like some of these places you mentioned, like the Kikuyu Hospital, I used to go there, especially when I was in high school. Right now, much of my time is spent in some children's homes around my area. I normally go there, just spend time with the kids, um, teach them a bit of coding skills, a bit of chess. We play a bit of games, um, like just to help them, sort of develop their skills. And also, like going to some of those places just gives you a bit of satisfaction, like as an entrepreneur, in terms of looking at how the kids think about things, how they think about problems. It helps you also to also come back to basics when you're thinking about problems, because when you can go to some of those children's homes and then you give them a basic problem to solve, and then they give you an amazing solution. You're like, oh, actually, some of these solutions are not a complicated. And they always reason. The kids work when they're in groups. So if you can find a group of kids and throw a problem at them, they give you all the amazing answers, right? So going there always actually serves me best. I mean, it serves me best, even though it's being selfish as well, because you can go there to look for answers. So so you're always like, okay, there's no true selfless deed, but I try to make it a bit selfless. You're doing it for the sake of the deed, not because you want some output from it. So I think any young person who wants to, especially go back to basics, just find a way for you to give back to the community, especially spend time with kids or go to a local hospital and volunteer. It always gives you a different perspective in terms of how some of these things, some of these like life's problems, how you can basically look at them from a different perspective. It always just works wonders.
And we spoke a little bit about the diaspora. We spoke a little bit about entrepreneurship and talent, and what you had to do in building your companies and finding talent. One of the things that people are always talking about is the brain drain that is there. It has different names in different countries. I think in Nigeria, famously, they call it Japa or something, where essentially you have a lot of bright young people who grow up within the ecosystem. At a certain point, they graduate top of their class in uni, and they're just snapped up by Microsoft or Google, and they go out to Seattle or to San Francisco or to London. And the question really there is, do you really think there's anything that can be done to sort of either slow down or reverse this, or do you think it's negligent? I mean, I've spoken to certain people who spend some time studying these immigration trends, and they say, well, it doesn't really matter because people travel globally. I mean, the Chinese will travel to go and do business in Africa, but it's not going to bankrupt China, and the Africans will travel to go and work and do business in Europe and in the Americas, and it's not going to bankrupt them. What's your view in this? Is the talent pipeline still strong despite people moving, or are you seeing some good people leaving who you could possibly partner with or employ in your companies?
Yeah, I actually there's interesting. There's a company. I think there's a company in Nigeria called, I think it's called Japa.com or something. Like that actual people leaving the country has now been sort of commoditized.
Oh, really?
And it's a big verb everywhere. It's become an action,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
everywhere.
yeah.
And it's actually interesting because and it's actually it's a very sad state of affairs. And I always discuss this with my colleagues, where we always discuss like, okay, if everyone is leaving Africa, who is going to build for local problems? And the only way, like if you look at guys who have built really strong and good businesses, are guys who have been in Africa the longest. Like look at guys who are doing amazing stuff across the country. I mean, there are exceptions here and there. Like I know there are Africans who live in London and they do other things in the African market, but they still have teams here.
Yes.
So if you have bright minds, if you have extremely bright minds leaving the African continent, and you only have, let me say, average talent remaining here, that means even the economy will be run by not so bright people. So you'll have like very mediocre solutions coming out of the continent. You don't have guys who are pushing limits in research, limits in various parts of the economy. So you always you will be like sort of stuck in this loop where we are trying to find solutions to problems, but the brightest people of the continent who are supposed to bring in these solutions, they are leaving the continent. So you're always training for the other markets, right? So for example, looking at what is the current policy in the US, they're trying to put in place, where they're saying, if you have been accepted into an American university and you're one of the brightest people in the world, why should you leave the US? You should basically be given the ability for you to stay in the US and work there for as long as possible. So if that policy is put in place, you can imagine all the bright people who are leaving Kenya to go and study in the US, they basically choose to stay in the US, right? So at no point will they be coming back to develop their own country. So if we are not going to give like options to the brightest of the brightest in our own countries, we will be basically, actually it will be worse, because the people remaining behind won't have an incentive for them to really do anything, because they are like, okay, we've been left here and let's now rely on the government for it to create jobs. So you always want to, even again, going back to the example for the US, you can see they are trying as much as possible to create incentives to retain the brightest people in the countries. But now in the African market, like in Kenya right now, like the president is always on trips looking for places where Kenyans can go and work. But you keep on asking yourself, like, all this money you're spending to go around the world looking for opportunities, why not open 2 factories somewhere and employ people? So you always wonder, like, what is the reasoning behind the government itself championing for export of labor than basically trying to find solutions for that labor to be retained locally. And it's always a sad state of affairs, to be honest, where you don't see any solution in sight. I was looking at, I was watching some video. Actually, this is this guy from Nigeria. He's called G, one of the co-founders of Flutterwave and Andela. It's a very bright guy. I think you know him. And there's this video where he was being asked about this. It's actually a podcast. I've forgotten the name of the podcast. And he was being asked, like, you as a person who has tried his best to solve unemployment. I mean, he tried to solve unemployment through Andela, and he also went to start off Flutterwave. Where do you think all the 100 million people in Nigeria will go? Right. So, which industry do you think will be absorbing all these 100 million people? And he was like, right now, being totally honest with the government, I don't think we'll catch up with the rest of the world in terms of teaching ourselves that we will catch up with industrialization. I mean, right now, literally, there's nothing Africa can do to catch up with China in terms of skill, in terms of mechanization, in terms of product, in terms of innovation, in terms of research. It's like these guys are 1,000 miles ahead, right? So there's literally nothing for you to say, okay, you'll build 10 factories and then start bringing in product development back to Africa. Like, you cannot, like, for example, saying you want to build factories to do phones, when at the same time those phones are being produced at a cheaper rate in China. And the answer I ended up giving is, like, I think right now, if the government drops the ball on this one, which is an opportunity that is just staring us in the eye, is I think Africans should train. We should see a future whereby we have 1 million Africans seated somewhere in an office complex monitoring self-driving cars. That is the future I see for young people in Africa. But all these other areas that the government is trying to invest in, I don't see the results. We need to jump into this opportunity right now, build the infrastructure that is going to monitor self-driving cars, and you can only do that by just putting a bunch of people in a room somewhere and monitoring these vehicles. And that is the only place where I see young people getting into. So when you hear such a statement, it actually moves you, because this is someone who was trying to build all these businesses and because there are basically no other options, that is the only option that is able to absorb millions of people in their numbers. So when bright people are leaving the country, who will build such an infrastructure for these young people, right? Like, for him, he doesn't have time to build that infrastructure. So when people are jumping the country and going to other places, who will build this infrastructure? So I think right now, like, there's a lot that needs to be done by government. It's like unemployment right now is a government issue. Like, you have to create incentives for entrepreneurs to build factories, for them to build factories, industries where young people can work. But if the taxation is high, the rates are high daily, then it becomes a really hard task for the private sector to build solutions for that market. So right now, honestly, like, there's so much government can do. The private sector can only do so much to absorb labor, but a lot of work has to be done from the government side, you know.
That is fair. That is fair. And I think I've asked, or if not most of the questions. Is there something that you wanted me to ask that I didn't ask?
Oh, I mean, that's pretty much it. I think we've covered a lot. Africa is big. I mean, we haven't spoken about opportunities in. I mean, we are currently exploring Lagos in West Africa, and I'm finding
Mhm, mhm.
getting business there is also a different thing. And also, the way you go to Nigeria is different from how you go to
South
Ghana,
Africa.
South Africa, different. Like right now, we are more likely to get a client from Ghana than Nigeria. So like we had someone reaching out us from Ghana, like we need this solution and we need your guys from Nigeria to just cross over because so we were like, interesting. So we are getting business from Ghana and not Nigeria when we thought Nigeria would be our first place to get a client. So you always get surprised. I mean, we haven't spoken about North Africa. We are getting inquiries from some companies there. Egypt has one of the
Mhm.
largest manufacturing bases in the world, right? Like
Right.
they export
Yeah.
literally stuff to the other countries, and we serve manufacturers. We are seeing guys sending in inquiries. So those dynamics are very very different, right? So there's so much to be spoken about in the African market, and we can talk about it the whole day. But I pretty much feel we've addressed much of the areas that the listeners might be concerned about, especially on the investment side, the the areas where they can also chip in as investors, and some of the opportunities that they might be looking at, especially if someone wants to leave employment and get into business. I think
Mhm.
the cutting short is like we need to have a lot more Africans getting into business, trying things and failing. A lot of people are always looking on the safer route of employment. If we can have more people thinking about how do we build local solutions in terms of what needs to be done, and local solutions can even be thought about like even local companies. How
Yeah.
can local companies train their employees to think about entrepreneurship and innovate within the company, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
now, I was telling my friend like local like we have a local Safaricom again. It might be out of business in 3 or 4 years because their bread and butter is currently being um, threatened by Starlink, right? I literally have a Starlink just there. It's literally here, and I haven't used it, right? Like
I have one as well in my at my rural compound. Yeah.
it's just here.
Because yeah.
You can imagine,
Right.
um, in in 3 months, I might stop paying for Safaricom, and my money will be going all the way to Starbase. So
And they would, and then they dug the fiber already and it's under the ground, and their models said that that money was going to come back in 10 years, and they've only been able to
exactly.
bill people for 3 years, and then now that fiber is useless. It is how fast the world changes and how you
How fast the
can
world moves.
miscalculate. Yeah.
So how do you train your employees to think about solutions that so if Elon Musk has launched Starlink, for example, can your employees think in terms of how they can collaborate or innovate or make it cheaper or whatever, branding like
Yeah.
so most of those you'll find most of these employees are trained to be employees, which is a really sad state of affairs. Like I normally have discussions with guys in Safaricom, and the employees always tell you that that's not my department. So you always wonder why, like you're always only concerned about your department. Like that is in terms of how much you can think, right? So and all these are products of our universities. Going back to your question about like drain, like garbage, talent drained from our countries. If you ask someone from Safaricom, they should be able to tell you what is their plan for Starlink, what is the strategy, what products they have, whatever. This is a someone. If someone is thinking in that direction, that means this person can leave Safaricom and go and
Yeah.
start their own thing to compete with Starlink, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and again, the only person who can build a business that can compete with Starlink locally maybe is someone who has been in the telecom space. But if you have just employees who are not thinking about 5 years from now, I mean, we only have more unemployment coming in, and us paying subscriptions prices to California instead of sort of Kenya, right? It's
That
crazy.
is that is fair. The wrapping up and the parting shot is always, if you can tell the listeners why do you love Africa, and why you're optimistic about the future of the continent.
Well, I mean, I think having traveled to a bunch of cities in Africa, I think there's always one thing that stands out about Africa. It's just the people, man. Like here, the people are always they always say in any company, what makes a company succeed is the people. And I think if we continue with that same spirit where we have that warm spirit of being welcoming, of being extremely open to things, I think we'll have a lot of companies globally preferring to hire from Africa, right? Because
Mhm,
because
mhm.
because we're generally friendly people. Like I always find my friends who come to Kenya and they ask after they've gone back to the US or whichever, they're like, you guys are, what do you guys take? Like you are very friendly. Like you are walking in the road, everyone is saying hi, like people, it's like everyone knows each other. When I'm in New York, no one will even my neighbor can't even say hi to me, right? Uh,
Yes, yes.
so I love Africa. Like I love Africa. Our people is just our greatest treasure. And if we can only invest in that, I think we'll have so much happening for our continent. And you can never replicate the people themselves. Like you can never replicate the spirit of the people, right? So that's one of the things that I love about the African continent. And we have so much to offer, man. Like this is the only continent where you go to a city and you like find a national park there, or you go to a city and you'll have four different communities who are doing four different things in their lives. So
Yeah.
um, as opposed to like homogeneous places, like say in some cities in the US, you can only find only guys from the US. You can't find other guys from other countries. But if you're in Nairobi, you'll find 50 nationalities living there because of
Mhm.
the spirit and the people that I talk about, like in terms of our willingness to accept people from globally, right? Which actually means like there's so much you can do here locally that you cannot do in other places because of the diversity of people here. So that's one of the things I love about Africa, and also the opportunities here are massive, right? I mean, think about something like food security in the world. Like if there's a continent that can supply the whole world with food, even if they run out of food, is Africa, right? So that only means one thing, like the next 20, 50 years, there are some sectors where the world will basically rely on Africa, like food security, right? So if you're not here and you're on ground and you're not doing stuff, man, you need to be here on ground and just see the amazing things happening here. So those are the two main reasons why I love the African continent.
That is amazing. A very, very good note to end this on. With all that energy at the end, and with certainly more than 2 hours of listening, the listeners might want to listen to this part of the pod, which is always my favorite part. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only and should not be mistaken for a startup incubator, a pitch deck, or a due diligence checklist. No financial, legal, or angel investing advice will be given or has been given, unless, of course, you count investing in African brilliance. The host and the guest speak in their personal capacities and do not represent their employers, investors, co founders, former classmates, or favorite fintech apps. All opinions are theirs and subject to change at any time. Success stories shared here do not guarantee future exits, unicorn status, or even breaking even in your own story. And no, we do not offer any seed funding yet. Any reproduction or redistribution of this podcast or Bernard's entrepreneurial source without the written permission of the producer, Mr. Maro of Africa, may result in aggressive tweets and possibly a visit by our lawyers. Seriously, don't do it. The Afrophile Pod is recorded, produced, and edited by Maro of Africa. Tough Maro serves as our executive producer. Our theme music was sourced by Robio Kunyanga. Brian Maro is our global head of podcasts. Thank you for listening to the Afrophile Pod. We'll be back next time with more reasons to be bullish on Africa.